Hello, is that okay? So, despite being a mainly reptile, oh, take it off. Sorry. All right, is it okay, guys? Thank you. Sorry, I'm very loud. So, besides being a mostly reptile biologist, I was looped into working with burrowing owls by a rescue who has run their trans-relocation efforts on the West Coast between Arizona and New Mexico, as well as recommending the designs for artificial burrows that have been used in California, mainly the San Diego area, as well as Colorado. And so I was asked to start serving the students. At the time, I was a professor at Grand Canyon University. I just started my PhD at Loma Linda University after leaving teaching at 13 years, grade school and college, to go back for my PhD, where I'm doing mostly work with invasive tegu lizards, which is mostly what I do. So this is I call it my money-making project, because not everybody's on the lizards. Horned lizards are an easy sell. Some of my other giant lizards and snakes are not. So these are our flagship species, but we've found some amazing things over these 7 years that we've done this project. And as we prepare for our first publication, and we're in statistics right now on this paper, we had an incredible discovery 2 years ago, and excited to share it with you guys. So we're looking at burrowing owls. This is western burrowing owl, which is a subspecies. So a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I have a background as a professor, researcher, and teacher. I am originally from Michigan, as well as my husband, who's here today. And I spent time at GCU and then founded my own nonprofit a year ago in order to kind of separate my research work. And I am funded both by Grand Canyon University as well as Loma Linda University for a variety of these projects. But this project in particular is funded by Grand Canyon University. As I mentioned, I'm a reptile person. In the top left is the tegus, which are my sole love, as well as my logo. And that's my yellow anaconda playing SeaWorld with me during the summer in our pool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the western burrowing owl, which I mentioned is a subspecies, so it's Athena cunicularia hypogea. These guys are found across the United States as well into parts of Canada, Mexico, and even into South America. Mexico, their populations are unchanged, but across the United States, they are down 97% nationwide, and it's almost exclusively from urbanization and its various effects. These guys live in burrows in the ground, which can be pictured here in the foreground. This is what we consider a natural burrow, and I'll be using two terms today. Natural burrow is anything that's created by natural means. It could be an outwash from a storm, ground squirrels, which are going to be a big part of our talk today, bunny rabbits, as well as human construction. They will live under cracked sidewalks. Almost any hole will do is one of our jokes in the field, and they truly will live anywhere, but that's a naturally created burrow, meaning we didn't install it. Now today we have a treat for you. We do have a poster, and two of my undergrad students from GCU are here today, and we have a little mini artificial burrow with a plush owl to show you what actually goes under the ground, but it's basically 4-inch or 6-inch irrigation ribbed black tubing. And it connects to literally a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket with holes in it. And we bury this, and it's an artificial burrow. So artificial meaning we actually are trapping the owls with one-way exits. They are banded. They are kept at Wild at Heart Rescue in Cave Creek, Arizona, typically over the winter. And then they are banded, as I mentioned, they are banded, they are fed, and they're trans-relocated at sites where artificial burrows are installed. And this has been shown successfully for about, we're going around, rough number here, something like 20,000 burrows and over 8,000 owls over 30 years by the efforts of this rescue, which was founded by Bob and his wife Sam, who has sadly passed in recent years, who've run this rescue for 30 years, and they're amazing people. And if you're in the Phoenix area, they need volunteers, and you can work with over 35 raptor species, and it's wonderful. So these little guys, they cage the exits, and they usually feed them for a month caged, and then we'll feed them for either 1 or 2 months by removing the cage, and that's just caging the exit of the burrow, so that they do remain in the site. On average, 30 to 40% of banded birds stay at the site, but the really cool part is about 90 to 95% of birds I see when I survey with my students don't have bands. So wild birds routinely choose and use artificial burrows. But the really cool thing is, so do other animals. Animals from gopher tortoises to bull snakes. We've documented 4 different species of ground rodents, including bunny rabbits and ground squirrels of different species. We've also documented a variety of animals that are going through the literature of Wild at Heart. But the reason we're here today is we're talking about horned lizards, and that's why we're very excited to share this finding that I'll get to after I talk a little bit more about burrowing owls. So in here in the site, we can see this is a burrowing owl site that is marked. We work with Fish and Wildlife as well as Game and Fish and Fish and Game, California and New Mexico and Arizona's agencies. These are some owls. Faith, who's my team lead for the project, is here today, and these are some pictures she took, so we called that the religious awakening pose there. Oh. And of course the close-up. They have incredible faces that can look from majestic to derpy in a little second. And these guys, you can see, have little poop marks there. And we use this to document their activity. We're really trying to understand the ecological structure. Why do they use certain like natural burrows and artificial burrows versus others? Is it the size or the angle of entryway, as previous studies have looked at? We are looking at everything. We've done insect surveys, we do pellet dissections, we mark things like feather count, poop pile count, owl sighting count, and we put that together to understand the ecological structure and really go, why do they use this hole versus others? And that way we can improve the use of artificial burrows. And one of our new projects is trying to understand, like I said, that it doesn't just function for owls, which is one of the big criticisms of artificial burrows. They're fake, they're plastic, they're fake, they're artificial. Well, they last a lot longer and more stable than natural burrows. And animals are choosing to use them for that stability. And although they're plastic, this is stuff, I mean, it's irrigation tubing. They're Home Depot buckets. They are not meant to break down. They're a good use of plastic. And, in so particular, a lot of the criticism of them are a little short-sighted. And there is, I will say, a lot of controversy, unfortunately, woven because these animals are in agricultural fields. Places like New Mexico and Arizona, they are very loosely protected. They're barely protected other than the Migratory Bird Act in Arizona. And so because of that, farm owners and landowners want to work with us to install artificial burrows. They have shown the highest pesticide level measured in a raptor's feathers, and they have no, so far, measurable defect to the animal from that level or any level of pesticides in these burrowing owl's feathers. So they do great near farms. They monopolize on insects, but they can take down huge prey. They're great for farmers. California's laws are so strict with the ESA and how they're regulated there, I believe, don't quote me, but I believe it's a threatened species, so they're currently listed as there, that the solution is one-way exit doors, shove the birds off, don't study where they go, and then the corruption involved in that protects that mentality and goes against the artificial burrows. So you're wondering why after 30 years and 20,000 burrows it's been so successful and there's almost no research and it's not being widely accepted. It's because there is a controversy, unfortunately, within the science and within the government agencies, and it sadly comes from California. So we are seeing big population decline. Here's some stuff that we've done. This is one of my favorites, I think, that my students ever found, was this guy living under a cracked outwash and the angriest face you've ever seen. There's our shoes. And if you want, find me or my students later. We have a video of this guy, the sounds he makes. You can only describe it as a witch from something out of a horror movie where, I don't know, like, what was that one with the giant ants attack? Were they harvester ants? Yeah. It's something like that, but it's like, I can't even do it. But it's amazing, and they love, I think, I have this hypothesis that they like the artificial burrows because of the rattle sound it makes. It vibrates the plastic and helps echo that. And if they're under cement or outwashes like that, it really gives a nice vibration sound. So, which helps make their sound, make them sound much scarier than the 8 inches of fluff that they are. And so here we tried different methods of measuring the entryway. We actually had an app that worked more effectively than manual measurements. It was one of the things we developed. And so while we are going to these sites, doing our surveys, noting different things, we of course are collecting, this is an example of a whole prey. They will drag a whole prey to the entrance and just munch on it. They can take down things easily 3, 4, 5 times their body weight. Here's an example of feathers. On the left is a burrowing owl feather, and on the right is a dove, that they are a frequent eater of the Eurasian, we have the eared doves, we have the collared dove, we have several, and mourning doves, but mostly the Eurasian is the one that we see on site. So we can note their activity from this. And why do we look at pellets? Well, I mean, clearly diet is really important. We want to understand how they're using their ecosystem and their diet changes. One of my favorites here can be pictured here at one of our sites. You can see these bright green parts. Does anybody know what species that comes from? Yes, it is also known as the Sonoran green June beetle or green June beetle or fig eater beetles, and they bejeweled our pellets every September and October, and we thought that was an incredible find to see that and they only do it at specific sites, but they really monopolize on the insects there as well. So understanding that was a big part. So artificial versus natural burrows, as I mentioned, there's a difference. This is Estrella Mountain Community College, or main sites where they are doing some research. They put in like posts to see like their perching heights. You can see this is an animal entrance of the artificial burrows. These are both artificial. And these are 2 examples of natural burrows. They can literally be a huge entrance drainage like hole, or they can be, these are like outwash on the left, and these are more like ground squirrels here on the right. So conservation implications are huge. Urbanization obviously has had a great effect. We have personally, of the 13 sites we survey, 10 are in Phoenix, 3 are in Tucson, 2 have been extirpated illegally by construction that we've had to report to Fish and Wildlife to have charges against them in the 5 years we've surveyed these sites. So it is a problem. By law, you have to call, and by law, you have to have an environmental survey assessor. They are supposed to look properly. If they find owls, they gotta report it. They put in a sign like you saw in previous slides that advertises the owls, and if they need to be moved or installed, they deal with it. You can't just build over them. And the sad fact is, they don't move when the bulldozers come. They get buried alive, and that's the real fact. The only thing that, in fact, that keeps them out of the burrows is extreme weather, but not bulldozers. So what did we find? Well, front row, I'm looking at you. We found one in a burrow. We found a regal horned lizard, a healthy adult female. This is how she was found in situ in the field. This was an older model with a PVC entrance that was originally used and then abandoned because you can see it is kind of cracking and deteriorating on the right. They ended up using just the plastic and then kind of wrapping it with like rebar and wire. This is how we found the animal, and I believe Ezekiel was the first person in the audience, picking at you, to find it. We were in the field. There was about 5 of us went to Tucson to survey. It was our first time at the site, and this was huge. This animal was very, very healthy. Here's me holding it, taking it to the site. Completely overwintered, very fat, very robust. All I got was a couple of head glances and like a wink of like, what are you doing to me? The first 2 people, of course, I immediately contacted in the field are also here. Dr. Dean Williams and Dusty Rhodes are my horned lizard buddies and collaborators on other projects. And they were like, yeah, this is really unique. And then we also decided to backfill a little bit of that burrow with some extra sediment, place her back exactly as found. And this was just really startling. Not only are burrows, like our first presenter mentioned, not something they're really using. It was just the fact that it's an artificial burrow. And the biggest criticism of artificial burrows is that other species won't use them. And like I mentioned, we've documented nearly probably 8, 10, 12 species between us and Wild at Heart that are using these burrows regularly. Now, what's interesting, there were no ground squirrel activity on site. We noted auditory calls of burrowing owls, but we didn't see them. They did have only artificial burrows at this site, not natural burrows or any ground squirrel activity. And we're wondering if there might be a relationship between the presence of ground squirrels and the absence of ground squirrels and the presence of burrowing owls, and the more of a somewhat of a symbiotic relationship between the burrowing owls and the horned lizards, possibly of just leaving each other alone. Commensalism. I don't know, we've never discovered any evidence otherwise of this one instance of horned lizards alive or dead. We have documented at least 3 or 4 instances of whole frog prey at the entrance of a burrow, so I wouldn't put it past them. But the way this guy was this girl, was so flat and I imagine the owls could have walked right over this animal and not paid attention to it, the way it was set up, which I thought was very interesting. So what this is going to become is a natural history note. We're currently in the developments of breaking this down. This is not the lizard we found. This is a field picture, a stock picture. But the idea is there's many species that can use these burrows. They are truly, whether they're artificial or natural, they're a microhabitat. And in a quickly urbanizing world, we have to rely on things like burrows and palm frond bundles and little things like that, this green space that we can increase to improve these animals, because just like horned lizards used to live really well in mildly urbanized small towns, burrowing owls do really well near people too. They really don't mind. They can, again, be at the edge of a parking lot, community college, they do really well. So this just shows the documentation. This was the first the extirpated site we documented, showing the owls over time. We had 4 owls were documented, and we still document them. We just went back and keep checking this site. It's unfortunate, but this spells issues to all species. If it's that easy just to go and bulldoze and remove animals, and if microhabitats, are known to create, opportunities for hundreds of species to live in a burrow collaboratively, cooperatively, mutualistically, and competitively, and predatorily, it's a big issue, and it's highly unregulated. So, as this becomes a natural history note, and we're super excited to announce this finding, I must say we did go back a year later, within 2 weeks of the initial finding. We did not see any horned lizard or burrowing owl activity at all. We are going to go back this year, so we hope to find it again. We hope it's not just a one-time thing, but we do think it gives us great insight that not only can other species use these burrows, but very special species. Burrowing owls are generalists, but horned lizards are not. They're specialists. but this gives us insight that potentially they could work for them. So, big thank you to my students. Roland Griffin, who's a Guatemalan zookeeper and an amazing human being, is doing our statistics and just jumped on this project to help as a collaborator. Faith and Ezekiel, my students from GCO, are here, but I've had probably more than 50 students and volunteers help on this project. At least 8 students are co-authors, and I have to, of course, thank my collaborators and supporters, Wild at Heart Raptor Rescue of Cave Creek, Loma Linda, and Grand Canyon University. And of course, I gotta point out Faith, and she is our #1 dirty hole inspector, so. She's all right. She's been my team lead on the project for 3 years, and I pick on her lovely. So here we are. This was coming back from the discovery, from finding that horned lizard that day, and just a really tough day of fieldwork, but big smiles, and I'd be nothing without my students, so they are why I do everything, so thank you guys. My natural history note that we're putting together, there's a little screenshot. This is our poster here today, so come talk to us about it and check out our artificial burrow that we have brought to show you. And we do have socials and all that networking, and we'd love if you guys connect and share with us. Thank you so much for listening to my owl talk and having us here today.